Last year, Devin Booker became the 7th player in the three-point era to author back-to-back 50-point games. 3 years ago, he dropped a 70-point game. He's still only somehow 22 years old, and yet the big question with Booker is whether or not those stats are empty. In other words, can he excel on a winning team? To start with, let's look at what makes Booker such a big-time scorer. His touch from the mid-range is soft like Charmin. This might look like a difficult one-legged shot, but it's right in Booker's wheelhouse. Note how soft the ball falls through the hoop on these. And at about 6'5" in socks, his high release allows him to shoot those over smaller defenders or in traffic over bigs. Note how he seals his man behind him here, something he does quite frequently. All this makes him one of the best mid-range players in the league, where he shot a blazing 48% this year. He also has a pull-up where he doesn't always create great separation, but again, that high release point creates enough daylight to fire. Notice the patient deceleration here with a little discard to find space, and that's money. He prefers these going left, but will still pull headed right beyond the three-point line, especially out of the pick and roll like this against dropping big men. Notice the elevation before the release. It's a big-time jumper, but it's also not super accurate. He's in the 22nd percentile on pull-up threes, according to Second Spectrum, and I think his percentages are dragged down by some poor shot selection. He loves to rise and fire in transition, or just walk into early threes like this, but he's not a good enough shooter to justify these rushed attempts. Booker also gets to the rim plenty, where he takes a quarter of his shots and draws enough fouls to place him in the 96th percentile in free throws per 100. Again, he shows craftiness by using his body to cut off this defender. He has good burst off of hesitation dribbles headed right, and the exact same hesitation going left, with the ability to finish with either hand. He gets low on these to knife past defenders with a little off-arm discard, and while he's not explosive at the rim, he's skilled enough to finish there or draw contact with regularity. He likes a bit of a runway to set up the hesitation there, and then lowers the shoulder and goes. He also varies that stride length. Look at how far out he picks up his dribble, then hops to the goal. Here he sets up his shoulders for a crossover, then uses an elongated second step to find space for the banker. So much of Booker's development has been on ball like this, deliberately carving out attacks that eat up time and other opportunities. His off-ball game isn't nearly as dangerous. He often idles in place or works to initiate from out high like this. He was slightly above average on catch-and-shoot threes this year at 38%, and while his cuts aren't the sharpest or the most dynamic, he is comfortable coming off screens. There's a classic veteran's push there to create space. His passing game has made strides as well, but that's still a work in progress. He's grown more comfortable distributing out of pick and roll, nice delayed feed there, and he'll hit lob passes to the roll man at times with fluid deliveries like this. He also misses his share of lobs on this roll action, and he's still not entirely comfortable hitting his diving big early, which is the key to unlocking this action. He is comfortable spraying to the corners like this when he's a pass away. Note the no look to hold the defense in place, and his transition passing shows solid vision and an ability to punish gaps in the defense that could be developed in the half court more. But the reads are still inconsistent. Here he makes a nice skip pass, although the more advanced play might have been to the diving Ayton, and he often overlooks skip passes to stumble into a questionable shot. He hasn't really nailed the angle or delivery of this pocket pass yet. Sometimes he has the right idea, but the execution is a bit off. And sometimes his head is down and he misses better options. This cutter is dangerous, as we saw earlier, and there's even a lob to the sealed big man on the far side of the rim here. Booker also has a habit of prematurely leaving his feet at times, looking for passing angles in these actions by jumping without having a clear outlet. This can be ironed out with experience too. Still, Phoenix's offense with Booker has been uninspiring over the last 2 seasons. In 2018, they posted a 105 offensive rating with him on the court, while being outscored by almost 10 points per 100. This year, the number was almost 110, the highest among any Suns starter, a sign that his growth has value in raising a team's offensive floor. Phoenix was a train wreck without him. On the other hand, Booker was still near the bottom of the league among team leaders in this stat, suggesting that his floor raising isn't exactly top-notch. His defense plays a role in these overall negative values too. He doesn't get up into the ball handler when navigating screens. The best on-ball guards will make themselves skinny around the screen and stay connected here, but Booker often loses that connectivity. And this is especially present off-ball, where he struggles with footwork, here seemingly not wanting to trail and awkwardly going under instead. He doesn't have great lateral agility, and it's hurt him in these spots. Notice how he's sort of in no man's land here, not wanting to go under, but not well positioned to trail McCollum, and he can't easily redirection himself around Nurkic. This lack of shiftiness hinders his man defense in these spots. Look at how wide his path is around the screen here, almost like a hitter rounding first base. His on-ball defense is actually better. His footwork and hip mobility are decent in spots, here staying in front of a weak penetrator quite easily. He uses all of that 6'8" wingspan at times, staying connected on this play and then swatting away the shot attempt. His footwork can be a bit sloppy though. He sometimes defaults to turning his hips and running like this, and you can see the lack of quickness in reacting to this move, although he does recover and force the turnover. His hands are occasionally active like this, and he was in the 40th percentile forcing turnovers this year. There's a better job staying connected around the screen. However, he's not a physically strong or vertical defender, and this means he can't slow down many bigs with help, and like many small guards, he's almost a zero when it comes to backline defense. Even when he rotates, he provides little resistance at the rim. Perhaps his biggest defensive issue is his low revving motor. He's often idling in place off the ball, and he often falls asleep or loses track of his mark. He's not constantly bouncing around or stunting and recovering, and he regularly blows box out situations like this. He also does his fair share of ball watching while he's camping out on defense. As a result, impact metrics view him as one of the worst defenders in the league, which brings down his overall standing in this family of metrics. I do think he's a healthy negative on D, although his man defense and size provide some optimism that he could survive in a more competitive situation. And that brings us back to our original question. What would Booker look like on a better team? If we compare him to other young, positive efficiency scorers with subpar defensive metrics who played on dreadful teams, the forecast is cloudy. None of these players were useless on playoff teams, but only Kyrie Irving and Tracy McGrady really excelled when positioned next to quality offensive talent. Booker's passing has developed, but I'm not sure his profile warrants a ball-dominant position on a good or great offense, and that's where his skills have developed the most. It's likely Booker would play a larger off-ball role next to better talent, and that would shift some of his value to off-ball shooting or secondary creation, where he could fit the bill nicely, but lacks that dynamic off-ball movement, and right now often works to recover to the top to get the ball back and reset the offense. His defense would be magnified on better teams too, and despite a low motor, I don't think he'd be a total disaster there with fewer offensive responsibilities. Overall, that makes him a pretty nice offensive piece right now, and someone who could be the third or fourth best player on a high-level team if he bought into that role. Earlier this year on the Thinking Basketball podcast, I discussed sub-all-stars, those players who provide critical value without quite making the all-star team. I'm not sure Booker's there yet, and although he has his defensive limitations and most of his value is on ball right now, it's easy to see how some experience and continued development as a shooter could land him in that range in the near future, and possibly even land him on an all-star team. The latest episode of the Thinking Basketball podcast is on the top playmakers in NBA history. Many of you have asked for it, so coming this summer, we'll do a series on NBA analytics. Thanks to all the new Patreon subscribers who help support this channel, and as always, hope you're having a great day.